giveth us thy blessing, giveth us thy righteousness, giveth us thy peace at the end of our journey.
Deathbound is a Souls-like action RPG from Trialforge Studio. This is their debut title that, as of this video, is releasing tomorrow. Like other Souls-likes, Deathbound adheres to a tried and true formula, but brings its own twist into the mix. The unique features here are that your player character is actually composed of 4 different essences, who you can switch between freely both in and out of combat, and the post-apocalyptic world the game takes place in. I played the Deathbound demo on PS5, and it's an actual representation of the final product, which is rare but definitely welcome. The game runs well and targets 60 frames per second, and I didn't notice any real deviations from it. I didn't see an option for a quality mode, so I'm unsure what the resolution is, but the demo starts with a portion of story that lays the ground for whatever is to come in the main game. Something I really enjoyed about this section was the artwork. It was reminiscent of an animated graphic novel, and it's a really cool way to do a story in my opinion. In Deathbound, there are technically 4 player characters called essences, and you can morph into them at any time. They each have their own independent health and stamina, and if one of them dies, then it's game over. The first of the 4 essences is a spellcaster and your principal ranged attacker. The spellcaster produces heat while spellcasting, so you can't just spam enemies from afar. If you do, the overheat will cause an explosion that will damage and knock you down, and leave you vulnerable to a lot of damage. The second character is a balanced swordsman, which was my personal favorite playstyle. It's definitely a run-of-the-mill sword and shield character, but it's familiar and easy to use, and let me ease my way into combat. The third is a spearwoman who's quick and has superior reach to the other melee classes, and utilizes piercing and slash attacks that also inflict bleeding. And finally, we have another melee class, but this time, one that uses no weapons. This class also produces heat while attacking, but this time the overall damage of the attacks is increased over time. As far as the feel of the game, it's very Dark Soulsy. It has that traditional Souls kind of weightedness to character movement. It has the equivalent of both the Estus Flask and bonfires, and even some more of the janky elements like wacky hit detection. Despite me liking the weight of the movement, the character animation is pretty stiff and unnatural, which causes it to be a bit of a distraction for me during combat. The combat is your standard Souls-like dodge, light attack, and heavy attack, with enemies having a poise bar. So very much a familiar affair, but there are quite a few twists in Deathbound. Your health and stamina are tied together, which can potentially reduce your character's stamina if they've taken too many hits, and it's something that I haven't experienced in a Souls-like. To be fair though, I haven't played that many. Another unique aspect, owing to the 4 characters, is that when you heal, you'll be pulling from the health pool of other characters. Additionally, whenever you defeat an enemy, the essences that aren't being used get healed a bit, so there's a nice, meaningful balance to make the players use each character. Of course, you can also morph while attacking, which requires a slot of sync. Sync is displayed at the bottom of the screen and is indicated by a blue bar. You gain sync each time you hit an enemy or a perfect dodge occurs, which you'll know if you had one because things go slow motion for a bit. Morph strikes do a lot more damage and usually can one-shot some of the not-so-strong enemies you'll face. If the sync bar is full, an Ultra Morph Strike will occur, which consumes 4 sync slots and does even more damage. Morph strikes are supposed to be a major feature of the game, but it felt like I rarely used them because I would rather have the class I preferred against certain enemies, despite the extra damage from the morph strike. You can also morph dodge, which will use a slot of sync, and just gives you an extra option of evasion. Both you and enemies are also susceptible to one of 4 effects that have a range of impacts. Bleeding instantly deals high damage, burning reduces defense and damage over time, corruption damages over time based on current health, and frozen is self-explanatory and can last for a lot longer than you would expect. Like a lot of other Souls-likes, Deathbound is functionally fine, but it doesn't have that added factor that really makes it stand out. If you're somebody who's just head over heels for a Souls-like, you should definitely pick this up. If you're more selective with what you're playing, I would hold out on purchasing this until it gets discounted.